Tekken 8's release in early 2024 was a pivotal moment in the fighting game's history. Not only does it mark the 30th year of Namco's long-running franchise, ushering it in to the next generation in the near decade since Tekken 7's release, but perhaps just as importantly, if not a little more so, it marked the first fundamental shift in the Mishima bloodline saga that has been running continuously since the game's debut in 1994. Now, there were two, possibly three key events that prompted the consequential pivot in Tekken's story here, and had those that were invested in Tekken's story eager to see what comes next. The first, which I covered in my Tekken 8 review earlier this year, was the return of Jun Kazama, Jin Kazama's mysterious mother, who has been canonically absent since Tekken 2. The second, which I'll touch on here, was the apparent demise and permadeath of Heihachi Mishima, which occurred at the close of Tekken 7, and the third was the debut of Reina, and the path being cleared in Tekken 8 for Kazuya and Jin to have their showdown and potentially pave the way for a new arc with a new antagonist, streamlining this increasingly unwieldy Mishima story where several Mishima relatives have been battling it out for supremacy for well over 2 decades. So this has all changed because, as we've now learned, Heihachi Mishima has been promptly resurrected and introduced in the next batch of DLC for Tekken 8, which was certainly a curveball for many, barring a small, die-hard contingent of fans who did remain convinced that their Heihachi would return, and hats off to them, they were right. Even myself, despite having seen firsthand the seeming immortality of Heihachi over the years, I was quite convinced that Tekken had turned the page on him now. But here we are, very shortly into Tekken 8's run, with his swift return as DLC, and I think this does officially confirm that he has appeared in every mainline canonical Tekken game to date. But what do we make of all of this? What does it mean? And does it remotely make sense? Well, first up, I think it is certainly a sigh of relief for Heihachi gameplay fans who use him as a main, because despite me personally only ever discussing Tekken from a story perspective, it is prudent to note that a large number of Tekken fans do play this game for the gameplay primarily, and story plays a very distant second to the online play dynamic, the esports dynamic, and so on, and that's fine. And so those that favour Heihachi from a gameplay perspective will, I'm sure, be happy to see he returned, particularly as the debut of Reina, who many thought might have a Heihachi playstyle, didn't actually turn out that way, so we didn't really have an analogue to play as Heihachi in the game as it currently stands. But from a story perspective, it has certainly blown all previous theories and expectations of narrative clarity and narrative streamlining right out of the water, because having played Tekken 8's story now, we do indeed have a showdown between Jin and Kazuya. We have the debut of Reina, who has been perhaps somewhat positioned, although ambiguously at this time, as the next big bad guy. And we have Kazuya's relationship to Jun Kazama and his potential to become redeemed and good being left pretty open to interpretation, which I'm sure will eventually come down the line. So looking now to Heihachi's re-entry to the series, it kind of blows all of this out of the water. It contradicts what many of us thought may have been a recalibration of the Tekken saga, or indeed it might, because if we look at previous Tekken games, and I've been thinking about this since the Heihachi reveal, I think where many people have dismayed at Tekken just returning to this nonsensical story arc, I think he could prove perhaps an interesting one-off foil and actually improve this story, because what the teaser trailer seems to show is what many have theorised is a transference of power and this demonic power into Heihachi from Kazuya in his killing blow. And so perhaps like his son Kazuya, like his father Jinpachi, this demonic power may be the thing that sustains Heihachi and has brought him back to life. And if so, this is not really a long-term sustainable angle to maintain, but perhaps like Jinpachi's single-use inclusion in Tekken 5, or Ogre's single-use inclusion in Tekken 3, it is something that can temporarily bring tangent characters together to defeat a greater evil. It's the sort of situation where perhaps a newly redeemed Kazuya and Jin might team up, but based on the trailer so far, it seems to be something that is used to set up and propel forward Reina's story. Perhaps we'll find out a little more about who she is, where she came from, and so to that end, I think Heihachi's re-inclusion could work really well, rather than rehashing the father-son relationship with Kazuya or anything like that. I think another nod to that is the Tekken Monks, which have been shown in this trailer, which Heihachi seems to be training or in league with to some degree or another. And actually, while the personal story between Kazuya, Jin and Jun may develop separately, the macro story of G-Corp, the Mishima Zaibatsu and the monks helmed by Heihachi may play out in that wider sense, in that broader sense, and mostly be tied in with secondary characters that we do see glimpsed in this trailer, such as Eddie Gordo, Yoshimitsu, and so on. And indeed, I don't think we see anything of Kazuya in this trailer, leading perhaps to the confirmation that his relationship to Heihachi and his arc with Heihachi was concluded at the close of Tekken 7. So, overall, many people are celebrating this news, many people are dismaying the direction of Tekken's story, but I think overall it was a great reveal for Heihachi fans, and yes, it was a little nonsensical, but really looking at it, Tekken has been goofy and unwieldy since about Tekken 6 at least, and so Heihachi's reintroduction is unsurprising in the grand scheme of things, but it does have the potential to be quite good if he operates as a temporary inclusion in the realms of, for example, Reina and new storylines, if he is used to elevate others rather than become a central character unto himself again, and certainly rather than treading old ground with this seemingly endless cliff-throwing vendetta that he has with Kazuya and Jin. I think they really should be moving away from that by now, because Tekken 7 was the best conclusion that they could have had for that, and it doesn't need reopening, I think. But come the autumn, we will see what happens and how Heihachi is going to be utilised in this ongoing saga.